Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday edition video. Today we're going to be looking at the Johan De Witt, the Tier 9 Tech Tree Dutch Cruiser. So we're going to go over many things with the ship, the commander, upgrades, modules, look at combat signals. But first we need to talk about what type of cruiser we're talking about. You know, you can have those long-range kiting cruisers and warships. You can have the close brawlers, or you can have those medium ranges. And Johan De Witt, I think, works best at the mid-range and to close-range brawling, per se, when the situation allows for it. So, looking at the armor layout, you're going to kind of understand why a little bit more that mid-range, but particularly the close range. And the first is she actually has a icebreaker on her bow. She has a 40mm icebreaker. You know, normally your more cruisers at this tier are more covered with maybe a 25mm bow and stern, which you do have on the top half, but the lower half is 40mm, so it gives you a little more resilience when dealing with enemy ships. And then the stern is completely covered in 25mm, so you're a little bit more better off kind of being more bow in, angled in, because you have the icebreaker and then also the guns kind of protecting your superstructure, where in the rear you're a little bit you're more vulnerable, especially when you're dealing with larger caliber guns from enemy ships. The midsection of the ship has this 27mm down here and then 40mm on the top, so kind of switches compared to the bow. But we take some things away. It's actually interesting when you take this away, because this side plating, it's torpedo protection, but goes all the way around the ship. When you take that away, then you get to see this armor belt, 255mm. So she's kind of, I mean, she's a heavy cruiser, but like also this battle cruiser armor scheme kind of going on. And the fact that it's a little bit angled helps protect your citadel. So we take that away. Here you can see the citadel is actually above waterline, but we put the armor belt casemate back on. You can see what it ends up looking like on top. So kind of it protects that little bit that comes up above the waterline. So it can be, depending on your projection of your shells, can be a little bit difficult to get an effective citadel unless the enemy ship just overmatches, like longer range. You know, because it's going to plunge right through. Closer range, you know, maybe it hits up here and then just bounces up into the superstructure, is more of what you're facing. So, do you have a slightly vulnerable, but not too slight, just because of that casemate armor helping you out here. Alright, going over to the modules. So there's no upgrades to your gun. Right now, our reload time is 14.1 seconds. 180-degree turn time of 34.5 seconds. And you see that HE shell damage, kind of mediocre, 3,400. But the AP shell damage is where it's at. Much more so with this ship line, I would say, with 6,100. But some good fire chance capability. And we'll talk about that shortly. So you have an upgrade from the Hull A to the Hull B. You're going to go from 42,100 hit points to 45,900. Also, you can see your AA defense and your maneuverability increases. So the hull upgrade is what module is what I'm going to recommend you to go first and foremost for. Then you really want to get the gunfire control system, because your stock range is 14.6, and that's really rough at tier 9, especially if you're facing other tier 9s, but also tier 10s and super ships. By upgrading it will take you up to 16 kilometers. And then your propulsion is 32.1 knots, unless you take something like the Sir Mike flag. It boosts you up to 33.7 knots. In terms of your upgrades, on the first slot, I'm running the main armaments modification 1. Mainly taking this because I want to reduce the risk of my main battery becoming incapacitated. I want to improve the main battery survivability, and the repair time be reduced if my main battery should get knocked out. You also could take something like the auxiliary armaments modification 1, and this would be in mind for the AA. Mount survivability, because you do have one of the things going for this line is the AA. You can see we're working with some pretty decent stats here, but you could upgrade that even further, and then you can protect your AA. I guess I feel like more and more we're seeing more carriers, maybe per se, in Warships, especially higher tiers, and you're definitely going to see them more prevalent on the weekends. weekend players hop on. So this would be another option you could take as well. For the second slot, for credits, I would recommend running the Damage Control System Modification 1. This reduces the risk of catching fire and risk of flooding because you have full duration floods and full duration fires on the Dutch cruiser line. So the same length that a fire or flood would be on a battleship. So I've taken the Damage Control System Modification 1. However, if you have the coal to spare, you have two options. You have Defensive AA Fire Modification 1, which increases your action time by plus 20%, and your consumable cooldown time for the Defensive AA is reduced by negative 10%. Alternatively, you could also take Hydroacoustic Search Modification 1. This is actually what I would recommend going for. So if I click on it, it'll take me to the armory, and I believe my coupons have reset. And it's 17,000 coal, as is, but if you use the coupon, which I recommend using coupons when you're able to, for these special upgrades, it brings it down to 12,750 coal. So if I was going to be playing Johan De Witt more, I would actually go ahead and mount Hydroacoustic Search, because you're always going to be dealing with torpedoes, since literally every class in the game gets torpedoes. This depends on the ship. So being able to have that is very nice. We're looking at the Hydroacoustic Search. It has a 3.5 kilometer detection of torpedoes, 5 kilometer detection of ships, so maybe there's a destroyer or cruiser in the smoke near you. Submarine spotting, 2 kilometers. Action time is 100 per seconds. So then if you increase it by 20%, then you're looking at 120 seconds, and then you can actually upgrade that a little bit further with the Sierra Bravo signal. So you can see that added 10 seconds on. So you can really extend the length and get it over 2 minutes when you build into a Hydroacoustic Search. So that's what I would recommend doing on this line. For the third slot, I have elected to take the Aiming Systems Modification 1. As I discussed yesterday when we played the ship with the Wiles Wiki article, the accuracy of this ship at all ranges is kind of meh. It's okay. So when we take this, we are increasing, or I should say, increasing our accuracy, but reducing our shell dispersion by negative 7%. So it means our maximum horizontal dispersion and our maximum vertical dispersion is tighter. So we shave off several meters vertically and horizontally to get slightly tighter groupings. You can also see it extends the secondary battery firing range by plus 5%, and shell dispersion is reduced by negative 5% for the second battery. In terms of the main battery modification 2, I haven't really noticed for myself a struggle with these turrets turning at 34.5 seconds at the moment. If you're really conscious of that and you really want that, you can take this. But I prefer the accuracy, so that's why I run Aiming Systems Modification 1. For the fourth slot, I forgot that this was a upgrade when I was showcasing yesterday's video, because I noticed my propulsion seemed pretty low, so I was like, I don't think I have propulsion modification 1. And I don't have propulsion modification 1 because with the Dutch cruisers, you want to take the airstrike modification 1. What this does is it reduces your airstrike armament reload time. So if we go and look at the airstrike armament reload time, right now we have at 80 seconds. Without this upgrade, it's 100 seconds. So that means I'm getting able to utilize more of the strengths, more of the offensive capacity armament of the ship when I take the airstrike modification 1. Your airstrike aircraft HP goes up by plus 25%, so they're a little bit more healthier. You can see it's 2,638 now, and I don't remember, I'm guessing it's what, closer to 2,000 stock or underneath that. And then your depth charge damage is plus 15%. But you don't have depth charges on the Dutch cruisers. That's been a big contentious issue. And if I remember correctly, Wargaming, I think am I correct in saying that they finally relented and like, yes, we're going to give you depth charges? I think there was a dev blog on that, but they're just, for some reason, they're like, oh, it's going to take us some time to implement this or whatever. And that doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. So they're going to be doing that. Otherwise, propulsion modification 1 is what I would take. because it helps you avoid some more of those incoming salvos. I would have liked having this in the video yesterday where you saw some like HE spam and shells coming in on me. But because this is the Dutch cruiser line, the ship was built around the airstrike, and the airstrike is good if you are good at landing them. If you're good at landing the airstrikes, I'd recommend taking this, but maybe you have a really hard time landing airstrikes, then propulsion modification 1 is probably what I'd recommend to you. Then secondly would be the damage control system to get the fire extinguishing time and the flooding recovery time down by -15%. The fifth slot, to me, the clear winner is the concealment system modification 1. This reduces your ship's detectability range by -10%, squadron detectability range -10%, and it increases the dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship by +5%. So we have max conceal built in, including our commander, which I assigned to this ship as I had moved the original one off. And so we have 10 kilometers, then 7 kilometers by air. So that's really good. So it allows you to get really more close up in the island positions when you want to utilize your airstrike, because your airstrike has a 12 kilometer maximum range. So it allows you kind of play to your ship's strengths, in my opinion, when you take the concealment system modification 1. For the sixth slot, you can see I've taken the main battery modification 3. That is what is getting us down to that current reload time of 14.1 seconds. Otherwise, we would be sitting over 15 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. But it also comes at the cost of our main battery traverse speed being decreased. So it's not turning quite as fast. Otherwise, it'd probably be closer to 30 seconds, I would imagine. You also have the gunfire control system modification 2, which extends your main battery firing range. I don't lean so much towards this because the ship does really well at the mid-range, and to me that means playing that 15 kilometer and under. 15 kilometer, 10 kilometer window, that's what I'll say. Just because of that, giving yourself that 2 kilometers for the airstrike and that 10 to 12, and utilizing islands. So I don't see the value in this because this just encourages you to play away. This is something like you take on more of a kiting, HE spamming cruiser. And then the other option you could take is the auxiliary armaments modification 2. Secondary battery reload time, -20%, but it's the AA damage. So your continuous AA damage goes up by +15%. Your damage from shell explosions goes up by +13%. And number of explosions produced by AA defense salvos when the defensive AA fire consumable is active is +2. So you can have a nasty AA build going on here with the Johan De Witt, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that is enough for another option. Let's say you div up with a tier 8 carrier, then you're going to do really good against tier 8 enemy CVs when we talk about a few more other AA options to take here with this ship in terms of the commander and your combat signals. So I'm not going to go into the armament consumables. This is standard 5-second action time for the damage control party. Reload time 60 seconds. Your repair party is right now is HP per second 229, but we take the India Delta combat signal, we go up to 275. Consumable action time of 28 seconds. But what's particularly really nice about the Dutch cruiser line is that we are dealing with 40-second reload times on our repair parties. So this is that improved. This used to be really common, something like the Georgia, the Massachusetts, but this is making its way to a couple more different ships into the game. But this helps you play more of that mid-range and then sometimes brawling because you're getting your repair parties back up more quickly. Defensive AA fire consumable. Your continuous damage goes up by +50%. So if I open up our AA defense window, you can see continuous damage is 466 and then +50%. So then we're looking at 4, 5, 6, like close to, is that 650? Something like that. So that is really good. And then your shell explosion damage +300%. So that just climbs the damage by shell explosion, 1610. So that's going up over 3,000, 4,000, something like that, if I'm doing math right in my head. But it has action time of 40 seconds and reload time of 72 seconds. And then hydroacoustic search, we talked a little bit about this already. It's really nice to have, especially when you're trying to play more that mid-range brawling. Helps you be aware of torpedoes or maybe an enemy destroyer who could be lurking around behind an island. In terms of the combat signals I would take on this ship, it would be something like... I'd probably do something like that because you have the full duration fires, getting the fire duration time down. You're ramming, you're increasing your HE chances of causing a fire, which now is 22% instead of being, was it 20% without these two? Yeah, 20%, 22%. Alternatively, if you don't care so much about the fire chance, you could take these two. So then your consumables are coming off of cooldown a little bit quicker, and then you're getting your ship speed increased. But for the sake of showing things off, we're going to have the HE designated here. So in terms of our commander, this is the 10-point commander I assigned to this ship. There's 3 different ways I would say you could probably go with the build of this ship. So first off, let's talk about the 10 points. So first off, we have Last Stand. Your ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability when the engine or the steering gears become incapacitated. So this is really important to have on a cruiser, especially since you're playing more than mid-range with this ship. And then it can be up to you. You could take either priority target first. This just shows how many enemy ships are aiming at you. Or you could go ahead and pick up the focus fire training, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But we're going to circle back to that. So I'm just showing you what the 10 points I have now. 6-point commander, adrenaline rush. So this means that our main battery, our airstrike, our secondary damage, our reload time is being improved as we lose health. And then we're getting a buff to our AA damage plus 0.2%. 10-point commander, then go for the concealment system expert. Ship's detectability range, negative 10%. That's what gets us down to the 10%. So let's say you didn't want to take priority target first when you went down this line. Or let's say you did want to do this, and then you, with a 12-point commander, you picked up focus fire training. So your airstrike is actually going to be decreased. So instead of 80 seconds, it now becomes 72 seconds. And that's really great stuff to have here. Because it means you're able to get more airstrikes off and you're just increasing that other armament DPM. Your priority sector reinforcement also goes up, so let's look at the AA defense. So we go from plus 50% to 75%. And then number of shells and explosions in salvo goes up from 7 to 8. You see now 7. And then the aircraft preparation time, negative 5%. So really good stuff when you take focus fire training on the Dutch cruiser line. After this, I would recommend picking up the Superintendent. So this gives us not only 3 player parties, but 4 player parties, 4 hydroacoustic switches, and 4 defensive AA fire consumables. This to me is really important because you can burn through the 3 hills really fast since they only have that 40-second cooldown reload time. So to me, this is pretty important to have. And then things will begin to kind of switch up here. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So another 4-point skill you could take is the AA Defense and ASW Expert. So this, particularly right now with the AA, your continuous AA damage goes up by plus 20%, and your damage from shell explosions goes up by 20%. So you also have the Can Be activated that improves your ship's characteristics when your AA guns are active. Ship consumable preparation and reload time, negative 20%. So that's a nice Can Be activated skill that they've added on to this skill. So when I click on that, you see now we jumped from 489 to 587, and then we jumped from 1,691 to 2,029. So we've really been building into the AA between these 2 skills. So that's kind of why I lean towards taking this 4-point skill, because they just play off each other really well, and you're getting more value out of your AA especially with your defensive A fire consumable, and you're being this pain for the enemy team to deal with, especially in particular, what I'm referencing there is aircraft carriers or hybrids, or maybe other Dutch cruisers who are dropping HE strikes on you. And then what I do with my last 2 points, I'd probably actually just go ahead and pick up the Demolition Expert, if I'm being honest. Because when we have this, I have to actually click the correct one, our HE chances of starting a fire on target was 23%. So one of the things that you can do is you can troll enemy ships between the HE airstrike and your HE main battery, high explosive battery, to be able to kind of keep these fires constantly lit on them, if you do at least have visibility of them with your guns, that you can actually shoot them. There's not an island or something in the way. So you can really troll ships with the HE, especially if they're angled, kiting away, bow in. But then when they're broadside, you definitely want to be utilizing the AP. So this is the build I lean towards here with this line. Other things that you could do, I'm still going to recommend you take the focus fire training. I think that's just kind of a must, because it gets your airstrike reload time down further. You could pick up the top grade gunner. Your secondary battery reload time goes down by -10%, and then your main battery reload time goes down by -8%. But this means that the idea of this is kind of like not wanting to build into concealment per se, because you're only going to get this effect activated if you're within 10 kilometers of enemy ships, and you don't have radar to be lighting up a destroyer or something like a Des Moines. So your mileage is going to vary, I would say, greatly when you take this, because you don't want to be building a concealment if you really want to get the use out of this 4-point skill. So I think this is a bit of a mixed bag per se. The other thing I'd recommend is if you pick up the heavy AP shells, you can see that your damage goes up from, I think, was it 6,010? 6,100 goes up to 6,405. So again, this is only for your AP shells, and you're getting more damage from them when you're able to utilize them on broadside targets or just ships in general. And then you could pick up Survivability Expert, so you could actually boost yourself up an additional 4,058 hit points to 49,950. This could be the other build I would see running. Alternatively, you could drop Priority Target and then pick up the Demolition Expert if you still want to have that 23% chance of starting fires. However, for myself, I intend to go something more of like this build as what I've been building into and trying to run here on the Dutch cruiser line in general. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you appreciated it. Let me know what you're running on your Johan De Witt in the comments below. And if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.